YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook.
Fifth, 2009, 4:34 and 21 seconds a.m. God, grant me tolerance, patience, kindliness, and love. Grant me the strength to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences might be. Thank you for today. Thank you for keeping me sober. I will not mine be done. Amen. Sunday, January 25th, 2009, 4:17 and 52 seconds a.m. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me, and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those that I may help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Amen. Prayer for Anger. Sunday, January 25th, 2009. 4:22 and 13 seconds a.m. God, I'd pray for fill in the blank. This is a sick person. How can I be of service to him/her? Take away my anger so that I may better do thy will. Amen. Sunday, January 25th, 2009. 4:25 and 42 seconds a.m. God, take away my fear of. Fill in the blank. And direct my thinking to what it is that you would have me be. Amen. Seventh Step Prayer. Sunday, January 25th, 2009. 4:30 and 19 seconds a.m. My Creator, I am not ready that you should have all of me, both good and bad. I ask that you take away every single defect of character, which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. The promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new way of life. We will not regret the past nor wish to close the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experiences can benefit others. The feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Fear of economic insecurity will leave us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. We love feedback. This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook.
Recovery by Roger Hansen. Introduction. My name is Roger and I am 33 years old, getting ready to turn 34 on July 29th. I was born in 1973. I am from a family of 6. My mom and dad, Raymond and Ganita, my brother Robert and 2 sisters. The oldest sister Amy and my baby sister Becky. Becky is the youngest, and 4 years younger than me. Amy is a year older than me, and my brother Robert is 4 years older than me, so you could say I am literally the middle child. My parents had my brother when my mom was 19, and she was 7 years younger than my dad, making him 26. I was born in Wisconsin, yet I only saw that state for the first 2 years of my life. My family moved around a lot throughout my life. From birth to now, I have lived in Wisconsin, Illinois, Florida, Georgia, and Arizona as a child. We moved to Illinois after I turned 18. After 18, I moved from Illinois to Missouri, then back to Illinois. After that, it was constantly back and forth between Illinois and Missouri, until just recently when I moved to Indiana. Now I travel constantly back and forth from Indiana to Illinois. Talk about commitment problems. I started writing when my Uncle Everett died. I'm not sure of when it was. I believe I was 16. I wrote a poem for him and read it at his wake. I put it in his hand, and it was buried with him. Since then, I've written a lot. I was obsessed with poetry throughout all of my teenage years. My poetry, though, was pretty psychotic. I wrote about things that were morbid most of the time with an occasional love story to make my girlfriend happy. She loved it. Around 17, I became interested in short stories, because I didn't think I could possibly write anything long. Soon, though, my first short story became longer and longer, until it was no longer a short story. It was a fantasy novel. Badly written, though, yet long. That story never got finished, yet I still have it around somewhere even to this day. As the years went by, thoughts about other stories would creep into my head and I would write about them. I never finished any of them, though. I would constantly think of more stories as I went along, too. My stories would stick up and never get finished. Still, a lot of them were good ideas. Not all of my stories are fantasy either. Most of them are horror. My poetry became interesting, too. I eventually came up with my own style. I began writing stories with poetry instead of words. I'm not sure when, but at one point, I stopped writing. I took it up again every once in a while. I stopped writing poetry altogether until recently. My sobriety, the date is the first day that I went for 24 hours without a drink or a drug. I was actually not drinking for about 2 days before that date, yet that was the day I was enrolled in treatment. That day it was June the 14th, 2003. I was enrolled in the Imani House at Swope Park Health, Kansas City, Missouri. I have been sober for a little over 4 years. It hasn't been easy, yet it's been interesting. I have learned more in these 4 years than I have ever learned in my entire life. Living sober is an interesting way of living, and I believe that few actually hear the truth about what life is like for people in recovery. As of yet, I haven't seen any movie that best describes it. I learned a lot of things about addiction through recovery, yet for the longest time I couldn't figure out what the physical aspects of the addiction process were. It baffled me. Things didn't seem to make sense until I had about 2, maybe 2.5 years of clean time. I guess I'm slow, or maybe I'm just a little more honest than what I should be. It was hard for me to understand the concept that once I pick up a drink and then drank it, I would have such a strong desire to drink that I would no longer have control over my ability to stop. I had to be taught this, and a few good people, a lot of good people, were patient enough to give me the information over and over until it finally made sense. In recovery, not in the 12-step programs, but in treatment and other outside sources, I learned about serotonin and endorphins. I learned about the pleasure canal in my brain and the stem which controls pleasure and runs along the pleasure canal. I learned about Dr. Jung and Freud, about a doctor named Silkworth and William James, and Dr. Leslie E. Keeley, Sam Shoemaker, and the early Oxford groups, and the Washingtonians as well. They all had remedies. These men and the things which they taught were vital in the recovery process we know today. The truth about it is, at the time when I went into treatment, I feel as though I was ready to sober up. Some people never hit that point, because they never hit an actual bottom. The bottom is the word that most people who are outside of recovery have come to be familiar with, yet it seems that not too many people are aware of what a bottom truly is. A bottom does not mean that I go homeless, which I did. It means that I emotionally get to a point where I can no longer live with or without drugs or alcohol. While in treatment, I was told that I was emotionally bankrupt. I couldn't understand how because I was emotionally bankrupt. It's like going to an ATM and constantly making one withdrawal after the other. After a while the account is empty and I am left bankrupt. The same is true with my emotions. After a lot of withdrawals, I have become emotionally empty and bankrupt. I disagree a lot with the 12-steppers in that department because they feel that emotions are what cause the return to addiction or the relapse. I, on the other hand, believe that we get to the point where the bankruptcy returns and we get a bad case of the effort. That was what was taught to me in treatment, and it still holds true today, from what I see in recovery. I also believe that addicts and alcoholics could only receive benefits from the treatment I received, and that the more expensive facilities will not necessarily be the best options. That for good sober thinking, a visit to treatment centers in the downtown area of your city would be more beneficial. The problem with this is hopelessness, and that is where spiritual beliefs help. The psychic change is needed, as they say. Doctors, jails, and institutions have different ways of encouraging this change. Not all, though, still use one practice which even the 12-steppers use. That is ego deflation. Homeless shelters use this too. Now the shelters take all the booze out in their restrooms, so that people are exposed and out in the open while they are on the toilet. Jails and correctional treatment centers do this as well. I hear that they take the seats off too. Some homeless shelters make men stand in lines naked and wait until it is their turn to take showers. There is one correctional treatment center in St. Joe, Missouri, which makes all of the inmates shave their heads and wear identical uniforms. In the morning they all line up in a single file and they wait in a line by a small building. 5 people at a time go into this building and they are told to sing, "I'm a Little Teacup." They each must do this every morning. 12-steppers, though, aren't that harsh. Most of the ego deflation comes from within the fellowship. They all vary from person to person, because the 12-steppers have what we call sponsorship. Sponsorship is when a person chooses another person as what religious people would call an accountability partner. Most of the people in STEP programs overdo this. I was taught that I take my issues to my sponsor. He tells me what my character defects are, and who I need to make amends to, and that is it. If he tries to do more, he's a bad sponsor. This psychic change that I mentioned before is the key to the whole recovery process. I was on diversion once and they made me take a quick quiz. I took the quiz and the counselor came in and told me the worst news imaginable. She said that I would someday have to be placed in an institution for the rest of my life, and I would die hopeless and miserable. I heard that, went home and said the heck with this. If I'm hopeless, I might as well go out with a bang. So I drank even more. Not only did I drink, I made my addiction into the excuse for why I drank. Today I don't make excuses for drinking. My character defects aren't what makes me an alcoholic. The fact that I am an alcoholic isn't even an excuse for drinking today. My family isn't the reason why I am an alcoholic. For some reason, and doctors can't explain it, neither can religion or anyone else. When I take that first drink, I change. Just like the drink that first drug dose, the same thing. I no longer have a desire for drugs or alcohol, and I agree with the 12-steppers about this. I have recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. Not recovering. That too has its hang-ups, and I will explain why. Today, going to meetings is like taking out an insurance policy. I no longer have drug dreams, which I used to have, and I don't have cravings like I used to have. All of the problems that I have today have nothing to do with alcohol. I have the occasional thought of drinking, yet the 12-steppers inside of my hand remind me of the pain I went through to get here. Remember what I said, it's not easy, but it is simple. That thought alone stops me from taking the first drink. It's easier to stay sober than what it is to get sober. The spiritual aspect of my disease is that my mind will constantly forget the pain of the mornings after pissing myself or praying to the porcelain god. It wants me to drink, even still, after 4 years of not drinking. Doing what I'm supposed to do, going to meetings, talking and working with a sponsor, reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, prayer, and meditation are all reminders that I live by today. Socially, it has been a lonely life, yet I have learned solutions to that too. People really don't want to be around sober people, so I don't even bring recovery up. I have learned to stand on my own 2 feet, and if the other person happens to find out, He at least had a chance to get to know me before he judged me for it, and yes, they do judge you for being sober. Society either hates drug addicts and alcoholics and would rather see us wiped off the face of the earth, or they give us way too much sympathy and actually hurt us with kindness. Remember that we are first and foremost liars, manipulators, with alibis galore, and we take advantage. I was so into rationalizing I made excuses and I played the victim. Today I am not a victim. I overcome my difficulties and I move on. Before I go any further, I must also say that what is being written is in no way affiliated with any group, sect, religious organization, treatment program, or anything of the likes just mentioned. This is merely the ramblings of an insane man in recovery who couldn't keep quiet. If it sounds that I am a little moody or oversensitive about certain situations, maybe downright negative about things that I write about, you're probably right. Try to overlook the messenger, though, and see the message. I hope that you enjoy the material, and I also hope that if it can help just one person, then I did something good today. Roger Hansen.
This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. We love feedback. This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook.
What hurts the most? Saturday, February 14th, 2009. 2:20 and 3 seconds a.m. What seems to hurt me the most is when I am around people and I see what I know is the cause of their grief and pain, yet I try to show a little humility by letting them gain the experience from the lesson. What hurts me as well as debating with myself if I should be honest with the people I care about, afraid that if I come on too strong it will scare them away. It also bothers me too, when I was writing, but not saying a thing because I don't get the answers I wished for. Life is crazy. Dependence versus love. What has the world come down to? Security and satisfaction. Fear of the unknown. Sometimes I wish that I didn't know what I know now. It seems my life of ignorance was a sick, perverse bliss at one time. Then I remember the pain that I went through and I come out of it. Decisions suck, and for every decision comes to a consequence. Karma. Stepping. Monday, February 16th, 2009. 4:28 and 55 seconds a.m. In the program, we have a term called 13 stepping, or the 13th step. That's when two people who are in the program mess around. I almost came close to doing it myself, just recently even, after 5.5 years sober in recovery. All the time sober, everyone told me that I had a bad picker, and I thought that I understood that, but I guess I didn't. Even after making amends to women that I had dated all the way back to when I was a teenager. I know from doing that, I had a bad problem with picking the wrong women. Now in the program, I tried my hardest to not 13 step. Doing that once resulted in me getting horny, going out with an ex-girlfriend, and her becoming the mother of my child. You would think that was enough, but it wasn't. I ended up liking another girl who was in the program. She was fresh out of jail, serving time for manufacturing drugs, and now living with a sugar daddy who let her drive his pretty truck. Could she say she even slept in his bed but wasn't sleeping with him? She approached me and told me that she was interested in me, and I never had a female approach me so aggressively. I caved in and told her that I liked her too. I soon began to notice how guys at the meetings flocked around her, and I got upset, jealous. The night before New Year's Eve, a guy in the program followed her out to her car after the meeting to talk. I was leaving and she assured me that he followed her out to her car and approached her. On Valentine's Day, I wanted to call her to wish her a happy Valentine's Day, and at first, I got a message. That was cool, I just left her a message. Later, I called again because I was leaving for the day and couldn't get back to the phone. When I called, someone answered, and then quickly hung up. I was like, "That's strange," so I called back and she made a strange sound into the phone and hung up again. The third time I called, I was mad, and I got her answering service. I then proceeded to tell her message machine, "I don't know what this is about, but it's not funny. It's Valentine's Day and I figured you would want to talk to me. I called you and you're acting rude. That hurts, and you're wrong. Next time you see me, pretend like we never met." Here's a suggestion too: don't send emails telling guys that you love them, and then treat them like shit. You might find a good guy if you don't do that. Then I hung up. Tonight I went to a meeting and I ran into the guy who she claimed walked her out to her car and approached her. He proceeded to tell me about how she told him that she liked him and asked him to walk her out to her car after the meeting. He walked her out to the car and then gave him her number and asked for his. That was when I walked out to my car. She also set a date with him for New Year's Eve and then stood him up. That made me feel better hearing him say all those things because the guilt and shame of what I had told her went away. At least I know now that she deserved what was said. I still messaged her later and apologized because there is no justification for behaving the way I did. The program teaches us to pray for people that we are angry at. I would never treat a sick person that way. Why would I treat her that way then? I was wrong with my behavior. That doesn't make her bad behavior all right either. It goes back to why people in the program say don't 13-step. She only had 8 going on 9 months of clean time too, so I was also in the wrong. I almost messed up, but thank goodness sex wasn't involved, and she didn't get pregnant by me. I couldn't handle that kind of situation again. It almost sent me over the edge the first time. Thinking on Emotional Levels. Tuesday, February 17th, 2009. 2:44 and 16 seconds a.m. When I first sobered up, and while in treatment, I was taught to think on emotional levels. I was told that when emotions come, they are there and you can change that. It's how you handle those emotions that matter. I can change my thinking and my actions by thinking on emotional levels to recognize my emotions as they pop up and then change my actions when the emotion is recognized. That's easy to say, but the practice is hard to do. This thing with the girl that just hurt me is a good example. I was hurt, and looking back, she really didn't gain anything from what was done and I didn't lose anything out of it. I was hurt though, and I am not able to grieve as I should. Instead of crying or anything like that, I get angry and I lash out. I could recognize the fact that I was hurt, yet changing my actions was the hard part. In reality, I wasn't hurt in any physical way, but emotionally, I felt betrayed and hurt. I was constantly telling myself, just let it go, but I couldn't. I sent her that message on the phone, then I sent her to one again later, and now I feel bad about that. I should have let it go, yet I didn't. In the program, we are supposed to pray for the ones that we are angry at as if they are sick people, yet I didn't even go according to the program either. I was wrong. Admitting my wrongs. Friday, February 20th, 2009. 4:10 and 40 seconds a.m. Here recently, I wrote about a girl that I know on the internet that had hurt me on Valentine's Day, and how I lashed out at her because of it. I didn't write the rest though. I finally came to my senses and I wrote her back and told her that I was wrong for doing that. I can't believe how hard it is to let go, even after I did that. I did feel better for doing the right thing, but instead of letting it go absolutely, I asked her why she did such a thing on Valentine's Day. Quickly, I came to my senses again, and sent her a message asking her not to answer. She never responded, which was a good thing, I guess. I truly hope the best for her, but I think it's time to move on to better things. Friends from Akron. Sunday, February 22nd, 2009. 3:25 and 21 seconds a.m. Last night, I went to a midnight meeting at a club in Evansville. My friend that once lived with me was there chairing the meeting, and my car was finally fixed. I said, what the heck, let's check it out. It was usually a good thing to do, back when I first sobered up, and it was a Friday night. I went down to the meeting, and before the meeting, heard a lot of preaching about Jesus from my friend who was chairing the meeting, which he always does. As he preached, a couple and their son walked in. The man walked straight up to me and shook my hand, introducing himself. He sat in the club all through the meeting, while my friend preached, driving us all crazy. At the end of the meeting, he approached me again to ask about a meeting that I went to on Saturdays. I brought the meeting up during this meeting in the announcements. I told him more about it, and he asked me if I could meet him at the club on Saturday and let him follow me to the meeting. I agreed, and we met up, and he followed me there. Apparently, he and his family were from Akron, Ohio, the actual town where the 12 steps were originated. I saw how he stood up when he did the readings and when he introduced himself and where he came from. It was interesting. I thought it was worth bringing up. It made my week a lot better, and I think it was needed. This guy and his family were down here because of an illness in his family. His mother was in serious condition, and he was told that she probably has only about 3 weeks to live, yet he was still looking for meetings. To me, that's cool, and that is why being in the program is worth every minute. Just to see people like him and his family. Escaping into my past. Wednesday, March 4th, 2009. 7:50 and 22 seconds p.m. Since I've been in recovery, I have learned a few truths which I never could believe at the beginning of this 5.5-year adventure. When I first came into the program, I was told that I had to give up my past completely and that what I knew was what got me into trouble. I was able to understand that I had certain things in my past that caused my problems and that there were actually good things there too. I find myself as time goes on reflecting on old loves when I make amends to my ex-girlfriends and remembering the emotions that I once had for them. Things that I had forgotten as time tore me down. I then also see that they are just as messed up as what I was back in the old me days before. It's a grieving stage for me. It's like I am giving up the old finally. At the same time, I find myself on here going back to listen to some of the old music that I listened to as a teen and recalling the thrill of listening to the guitar wail. I loved listening to Iron Maiden, Power Slave, and Metallica, Trapped Under Ice, listening to the guitar howl. Randy Rhoads and Ozzy. Those things were honest and wholesome, yet I used them for means of getting into the crowd as a kid. I forgot the feeling of listening to music and liking it for what it truly was. What's important and what's not important. Wednesday, March 18th, 2009. 2:40 and 37 seconds p.m. I don't know if what I am about to say will really make sense. It usually doesn't, but here goes. I have been sober for almost 6 years. When I sobered up, I had just gotten out of a bad relationship, and I was homeless on the streets of Kansas City. I worked my recovered new life hard, and slowly crept out of the hell that I was in. The loneliness and insane thoughts still creep in. I try hard to stay strong, but yearnings for companionship and more out of life push me away from serenity and peace of mind. My emotional bankruptcy hinders me to this day. I look for women who are just as emotionally bankrupt as well. I let women choose me, but they are no different than the women I choose. I am now able to see and do things that I could have never imagined doing before. I can't believe, though, too, the emotions that come with sober living. When I was using and drinking, I was emotionally bankrupt. I hit a bottom that most people never hit. When things get so bad that you just don't care anymore, and the fear is so bad that it feels like a natural thing in your body. Fear becomes natural, and you accept it, then move on doing nothing, just sitting back waiting to die. That is when we can relate to one another. In recovery, my emotions have returned and they are extreme, sometimes intense. The 12 steps have given me balance and a small ability to control them through prayer.
This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. We love feedback. This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook.
Recovery by Roger Hansen. Chapter 1. What makes me laugh? Cry, the good and the bad. 1. What makes me laugh? I can remember a small farm that we lived on, a wreck involving a big military tow truck used for semis and burning down the barn on a small farm. We lived on the small farm next to the pastures and barn. We used to have to chase the cattle back into the gates, and I found a dead animal under the house once. My sister, brother, and I used to make vehicles out of cardboard boxes and drag each other in the dirt. We enjoyed the dust flying everywhere. I can remember the flatbed truck that always broke down every time we left Illinois when I was a kid. We would get out of the town where my grandparents lived in, and as soon as we did, the truck would screw up. Once the hub caught on fire and the tire slid off while we were still driving. I still recall the tire running down the street beside us. My grandfather had about 5 or 6 popcorn poppers from the 40s in the backyard when I was a kid. My Uncle Elmer and all of us kids eventually got together and scrapped them out for metal. Aluminum up the yin-yang. I can remember Grandpa trying to sell soda and ice cream. He always filled the front room from top to bottom with 6-packs and 12-pack of bottled soda. Everyone in the neighborhood would come over to buy soda from him. He even ran a tab. After a while he stopped doing that, so he tried his hand on ice cream, yet us grandkids would always steal his supply. He would get so mad. I lost my virginity at 11 when we lived in Florida. Her name was Michelle. When I hung out with Craig and Greg, Michelle's brothers, we would all stay up all night and watch hot television. That was when NTV first became a hit, and Friday night was full of video television. We would stay up all night. Sometimes we would drink beer. Sometimes we would do little things like catch frogs and throw them as high as we could into the air to watch them smack against the street. In the daytime, we would walk down creek beds and pretend that we were discovering new lands. We would swim in a semi-docking bay full of water just across the street from their house. I can also recall a day when we collected cans all morning for spare change, shoplifted some tapes and cigarettes, and went down to the riverbank to swim. All in the same day. In Florida at that time, it was the thing to hang out in all-night laundromats at all hours of the night. We would do that too. That's how I first learned how to rob soda machines. The old ones, that is. The newer ones are a lot harder to get into. We would race Hot Wheels around the trailer court in Georgia because it was set up like a racetrack. It had a paved circular road that went around the trailer court. Half of it went up a hill and then the other half shot down. Then it went back around until it went up the hill again. All the kids in the trailer court had a ball with that. We would all get together and race around it. I can remember popping my Hot Wheel up on 2 wheels at times while taking corners. I know that the trailer court was around Atlanta, yet I was too young, so I can't be precise. I can also remember trying to catch wild turkeys there too. In Florida, we used to worry about wild boars coming out of the woods, and we would chase wild turkeys in Georgia. We would visit Lithia Springs all the time. Even after moving from Georgia to Florida, we would travel all the way back to go there. We would get up early, pack all of the food, and travel in the morning, getting there just as it was warm enough to swim. The first time I had ever gotten a fish hook stuck in me was at Stone Mountain. It stuck right in my belly. Scared the heck out of me. My family seemed to like Georgia, but my mom couldn't handle all of the clay. Clay was everywhere, and it was constantly being dragged into the house. Georgia is also where our family first gave my baby sister the nickname Little Mama, and she grew into the name eventually. She still thinks she's everyone's mother. After living in Georgia and Florida a few times though, my parents decided it would be best to travel to Arizona. My dad had plans to make it to Bullhead, Arizona. It took a week and a half to get there, and it was one of the worst times of my life. The car was fine until just around Mississippi, then it started overheating constantly, so we had to pull over almost every half an hour. The muffler started dragging, so we had to use a clothes hanger to hold the muffler up, yet it was constantly falling back down on the ground. So there we were pulling over to cool the car down or putting the muffler back up with a cloth hanger. We had 10 people with us. Our family of 6, Ed, Linda, their baby, and Linda's sister. I can't remember the baby's name or her sister's name either. At the beginning of the trip, we had to let all of our cats loose because it was too overcrowded to bring them with us. We still had our family dog Brownie though. We were tight on money, so instead of sleeping in hotels, we would sleep in rest areas, in the car and on the tables. It didn't matter. I was able to see the Border Patrol bust a lot of illegal aliens at the border though, in San Antonio. Interstate 10 travels right next to the Mexican border, and a rest area is just on top of a hill looking down at it all taking place. We traveled all the way to Arizona on Interstate 10. By the time we made it to Tucson though, the money was running out. We stopped at a park and literally stayed there all day long, while Eddie and my dad tried to find some kind of organization that would give us money for our trip. It didn't work though, yet. They decided to finish the trip at least as far as we could go until we couldn't drive anymore. By the way, I never did see Bullhead, Arizona. We made it to Coolidge and had to stay in a homeless shelter for about a month until we finally got a small apartment. I've seen trailers put in the middle of cow pastures that are about a mile away from the nearest gate out. My family has lived in the middle of nowhere, in houses made completely out of concrete. Once we lived in an old shack set up on legs. It's pretty interesting when I think about it today. Stealing cigarettes from my parents. We moved to Arizona when I was just about to turn 13. I can remember having my 13th birthday, just after moving on to Dugan's Dairy. I first smoked marijuana with my friend Anthony. I thought at one time that I was 13, yet I may have been older. Around 15 maybe. Anthony was my first actual rebel friend. I first met him, and I wanted what he had, whatever that was. We started drinking together first, then I met his brother Tommy, and that was when I started smoking pot. We would ask one of the Mexicans to go down to the liquor store in Queen Creek Heights for some booze. They would, so we always got drunk on the weekend. To the side of the dairy, the Dugans had cotton seeds stacked on a concrete surface. They had hills of cottonseed, and all of us would go there to drink and play. I remember getting drunk and sitting on huge hills of cottonseed, staring down on the dairy farm below. When I finally met Tommy, he reminded me of Jim Morrison, I swear. I idolized him. In my eyes, he was a god. One night, I was over at Anthony's house, and his dad was having friends over. They were drinking margaritas made with grapefruit. Anthony was sneaking cups of it to me in his room, and that was when I met Tommy. He smoked a joint with me that night, and it was the first time I had ever gotten stoned. I had smoked pot before, but never enough to get completely blasted like I did that night. All that I know is, my ears popped and went low. I could barely hear, and it felt like my eyes were going to pop out of my face. I lay back on the bunk bed staring up at Anthony's posters. He had 2 of them. One was an Elvis Costello poster, and the other was Judas Priest. From that point on, we always smoked pot with Tommy. I can still remember nights in Hibley, staring at the lights off in the distance. I wanted to be in those lights so much. I eventually got to be in them, yet they weren't all that they were cut out to be. From time to time, I still wish that I had that innocence that I had back then, yet it's gone. I would write a lot of fiction, and my mind would fill up with imagination. I would write about being people that I always wanted to become, yet never could. To self-evaluate me, though, became the whole me. I overdid it. Mental masturbation. I saw a wall painted, on television, with a saying that I still love. Life is what happens while we are planning stuff. That is so full of truth, in my opinion. Two, what makes me cry? With my family, you can never tell. We usually put mattresses up on top of regular cars and tied them down. That was back when you could get away with it, though. The first time I met my Uncle Bill, it scared the heck out of me. He has so far served 2 terms in prison, once for molesting his kids. My parents would try hard to make it in Florida, yet every time, back to Illinois we went. I can recall my mom suffering from depression so bad, she would take sleeping pills to sleep all day. Staying at my grandparents' house. She was molested by my grandfather as a little girl. It's hard for her to let go of. My grandparents' house wasn't that good either. They still had a wood burner and no plumbing. They used a bucket as a toilet and buried the remains in the backyard until a sewer was put in the alley out back. Then they dumped the buckets there. They used a kid's swimming pool and boiled water to give us baths, and a water hose from the backyard ran into the kitchen window to supply water to the house. My grandpa's legs eventually were amputated because of gangrene. They had to cut off his testicles in the end, and he was pronounced hopeless because it eventually entered his bloodstream. My grandparents both died together on the same day. The house fire. I had to talk to a psychiatrist about that in treatment, and the hardest thing for me to handle is if he went to hell or not. I try not to think about it, though, stuck in a hard spot between son and grandson. My dad and his friend Bones. Bones had 2 boys and a girl. His daughter was Michelle and his sons' names were Craig and Greg, that were twins. I thought the world of them. I thought they felt the same way until I later found out they molested my baby sister. I didn't know that either, until much later when I was 17. I really never fit in with other kids. I loved to play the victim. Everyone picked on me, and I couldn't accept that. I wanted approval, and don't get me wrong, people picking on someone isn't good. Wanting approval isn't necessarily good either. I would play the part, though. I was an actor, and I did what I thought I had to so that I could get attention. I can remember acting dumb and tell the other kids that I was stupid so that they would give me some attention. I went to school in Lake Placid, for part of the 5th grade, and I was constantly getting beat up. I can remember hiding out, in between classes and during breaks so that I wouldn't get bullied. I can remember this time when I was in my agriculture class, and I was holding one of the garden hose with the sharp edge up. A classmate who didn't like me came charging at me with a wheelbarrow, hitting the garden hoe, causing it to cut my eyebrow real bad. The school sends me to the infirmary. They put a bandage on it and made me go to class. I guess they figured that I should go home, and then my parents could take care of the problem. I was constantly wanting attention from people who didn't like me. It was as though I felt everyone should like me. I used to imagine getting even with the other kids and what I would do to them. It was a constant thought, always in my head. I really can't tell you when all of these problems started either. I can also tell you, my parents were partying hard and heavy. A lot of drinking and extramarital affairs. This caused our family to become very dysfunctional as time went on, and I eventually, later on in Arizona, stopped talking to my father altogether. I would say a word to him for about 6 months, and I never really got along with him again after that either. Nights that we would come home from parties with all of us kids in the back seat. I would sit in the middle staring ahead out of the windshield, watching traffic. My dad had a way of doing things. He's the reason why U-Haul is so hard on people about their vehicles. He would rent a U-Haul and tell them that it was for moving locally, get the truck, move halfway across the country, and dump the truck off late at night, in a U-Haul station. He didn't want to pay the extra cash. My family moved into the trailer that had someone who was just murdered in it. I heard about that and it didn't sit right with me. Apparently, it was a woman, and her ex-boyfriend or ex-husband had a problem with her leaving him. So, he took a gun, placed her head under the mattress of the bed, and blew her head off. I can still to this day remember that story. See, most dairies have what we call a landlord system. They usually put trailers and houses on their land to house their employees. That was one of the big reasons why my dad liked working dairy. No rent or electricity. Needless to say, my dad was cheap. My siblings and I eventually caused too much trouble and my dad's boss told him to move us off the dairy. Then my dad quit soon after, and we moved away from the country to Mesa, Arizona. That would be the last time I ever lived in the country. When I wrote my poems as a teenager, they were pretty morbid. I was always playing the victim, not saying that I didn't come from a dysfunctional family and everything was great, but I used those things as excuses for behaving the way I did. My poetry was a way of venting my problems, and that was a positive thing, but I grew tired of it and stopped. Now, when I write poems, it seems harder. I don't feel as though I have as much emotion as I used to. I was constantly in la-la land, never grounded. I think that had to do with my thinking, though. I was constantly all about that. I can remember sleeping on the rooftop of empty apartments in apartment complexes all the time. It was all because of that self-delusional way of thinking. My life was fiction. I do miss the whole imagination thing, though.
This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, share, make comments, give up feedback. This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook.
but for the grace of God. Monday, March 23rd, 2009. 6:37 and 35 seconds a.m. In the end, the fog will rise and the obsession will go away, and the cravings are the first to go, but the build and forgetter is always there. I have a tendency of forgetting where I came from, but when I go to my meetings and things are both either good or bad, I see the troubles, heartaches, and pains of newcomers in the program still suffering, and the thought comes to mind. That could easily be me, and I am then grateful. When I am around the people in my life and I see the physical problems that alcohol has caused them, I say to myself, that could easily be me, and I am grateful. When I see the crazy man at the meetings that have abused drugs for so long he can't differentiate the true from the false, I say that could be me, and I am grateful. When I sponsor others and I get to know them, I realize that they are assholes, and that is okay because I am one too. I watched young people in their 20s fight for their sobriety and go back out, thinking the whole time that I never thought of sobering up at 21, and I see a miracle, and I am grateful. Are there any answers to the riddles? Maybe. I am not the one who needs an answer for those riddles. Things just are, and I am grateful because. But for the grace of God, there go I. Indecision. Saturday, April 4th, 2009, 2:52 and 45 seconds a.m. Edit. Do you remember the song from Green Day, When I Come Around? That was the song that reminds me of myself as a kid. I was the kid that never stuck around. You would see me when you see me, and that was that. I always took pride in that, until I sobered up and figured out that was a flaw in my character. I had a problem with responsibility and accountability. I still have that problem. It's fear, if you ask me. I always talk about that Greyhound bus. Every time I look at one, I want to be on it. You would figure that by now, after being sober for 6 years almost, I would want to settle down. That isn't the case, though. All of my life, I was always running places and never staying in one place. When I was growing up, my parents did the same thing. I guess it was passed down from them to me. Now, the urge is on me again. I want so badly to get out and get away. Things are falling apart around me, and all the things I have been trying to work towards and for are disappearing. I'm tired of the work that life demands on me. I was so lazy when I drank and got high, it seems. I was never a functioning alcoholic addict. Now that those days are gone, though, and I am trying to do the next right thing, it's required that I do things. In the back of my head, I want an escape. I want to get away and never come back. I want to disappear. Life seemed easier when I was on the streets and I didn't have to think about the consequences. Now things have changed. The messed up part is, I believed that if I turned my life over to God, things would get better, so I did what was suggested to me. I had a hard time in the beginning at becoming responsible, but when I finally decided to try, it got hard. Now I tried and things started falling apart. It seemed to me that God had abandoned me, and I look around and He not only abandoned me, but He put me into situations which were much worse than what I was in before. Now I live with active alcoholics that drink from morning to night, my aunt and uncle. They have neighbors that they sell their meds to for booze money, and I watch as ambulances rush to the neighbor house because she broke down those same pills and shot them up her veins. Yet I go to my meetings and I pray. I ask God for help, and still, it seems no help comes. What can a person believe if help is never there? It's never what it appears to be. Sunday, April 19th, 2009, 11:34 and 43 seconds a.m. I live in a world where people look at the others around them and they judge. I live in a life where I wake up and look outside to judge what the day will bring. I listen politely as I am told how to behave, what to think, the things I should believe, and what is right. I try, yet the answers never come. I think too much, and yes, the consequences are definitely here. I hope for the best and I try to be content with life, yet I'm always wanting more. Tomorrow never comes and yesterday is gone. You should live in my today. Tell your fairy tales to me and hopefully I will believe. Tell me what great treasures await out there in that beautiful horizon. I will listen, and I will hope that you are telling the truth. Yet still, I say live in my today. Give me the solutions to all my problems and tell me to pray. I will, and it will work. Yet take away those feelings that burn in my heart, because the truth is, I actually enjoyed the temptations of the past. I know that my life isn't the best, and I know that I haven't much, but look at what you show me if I don't live up to your expectations of what you feel I should be. I will wait though and hope that you are right, while I do those things that are suggested by the people around me. Dreams. May 27th, 2009, at 8:18 a.m. My dream is to someday figure out what is right. Do I really know if it is right to want a family to provide for as a purpose in life? Because I do. Yet I am told that I should never use others as a reason to do what I should be doing in the first place. That's easy to say when you have exactly what it is I want. I'm tired of being alone in this world. Tired of not having the physical, emotional, and spiritual connection with another. I would only want my life to be what God wishes it to be, though, and still, I want more, it seems. Here Without You. November 22nd, 2009. I can remember listening to that song when I lived in Independence, Missouri. I was sober for just over a year and I had decided to go back to Kansas City to try to win back my old love. That didn't work out to say much. When I was there, I got a job at Wendy's and I walked back and forth to work with my headphones and a CD player to and from work. I would listen to that song both ways, and it reminded me of her. It was a 45-minute walk to and from work, so I had to occupy my time, especially crossing the bridge.
This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. We love feedback. This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook.
Recovery by Roger Hansen. Chapter 2. Physical, mental, and spiritual too. The physical aspect is really about the human body and a better understanding of how it works. Food is turned into carbohydrates and protein, just like alcohol and other substances which are introduced to the human body. Food and other substances contain carbohydrates, protein, vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Proteins are complex molecules consisting of long chains of amino acids, which link in various ways to form different kinds of protein. Fats and protein are used for cell growth and repair. These are the all-healthy and productive process that the body goes through on a day-to-day basis. Alcohol has the same process as these, yet it's poisonous to the body. Instead of producing fats, proteins, minerals, vitamins, and fiber, it produces acetaldehyde. This is poison to the liver. In the liver there are hepatocyte cells. In these cells there are organelles. There are two types of organelles, the endoplasmic reticulums and the lysosome. Endoplasmic reticulum organelles transport materials throughout the cell. There are two types of reticulums. First, the rough reticulum, site attachments for ribosomes. Second, smooth reticulum, the site for fat production. Now then, the second form of organelles, the lysosome organelles. These organelles enzymes that degrade and dispose of unwanted and dangerous materials, such as acetaldehyde in the liver, taken into the cell, cells like the hepatocyte cells. These enzymes are proteins produced by the lysosome organelles, which are actually small structures, basically small organs, which perform specialized tasks, like producing enzymes. Organelles are surrounded by the cell membrane and float in what is called cytoplasm. Now imagine the day-to-day function of the organelles, acetaldehyde being introduced into the liver, and the damage that is done to the cell. Enzymes are produced throughout the whole cell to oxidize the cell substances, and then secreted in the vacuole. We alcoholics never stop once we start. The cell becomes overwhelmed with poison, so the acetaldehyde must be stored because the liver begins to shut down over time because of damage. Then the body begins to reject alcohol entirely. It can also be broken down to the level of DNA in the nucleosome inside of every cell. Alcohol disrupts these processes too. The nucleosome is usually the center of the whole cell, and inside of it DNA wraps around a core of binding proteins and bead-like bodies. Only one strand of DNA carries the genetic code and acts as a template for the formation of messenger ribonucleic acid, mRNA. Once mRNA forms, the strands of DNA reunite and the mRNA then leaves the nucleosome into the cell cytoplasm, joining the organelles and ribosomes, where the process of creating protein is completed. During this phase of development, while floating around in the cytoplasm, the mRNA attaches to structures known as ribosomes. As the ribosomes move along the mRNA strand, it produces a protein by bringing amino acids into place. It follows the sequence known as nucleotide-base triplets. A unit of 3 successive pairs of nucleotide bases is called a triplet, and each triplet carries the code for one of 20 amino acids, the building blocks that form protein. The sequence of pairs of each segment of D.N.A, or gene, determines which protein is synthesized under the control of that particular gene. Now, remember, acetaldehyde is being introduced into the cell while these processes being performed. Imagine the damage done in a process that has to be so precise. The gene, chemical reactions within the cell. There really is no true physical evidence of alcoholism, though. The phenomenon of craving has not yet been proven. To my knowledge, nobody in religion, medicine, or 12-step programs can explain that. I ask that you be open-minded enough to draw an honest opinion. Think of how DNA controls particular cell functions in every gene by governing the manufacturing of specific proteins, and how alcohol can change that process. Enzymes are the catalyst to accelerate chemical reactions and are produced by organelles. Alcohol in the liver causes the organelles to shut down and store acetaldehyde in fat. The cells are damaged and the liver shuts down. It slowly deteriorates because of excessive amounts of acetaldehyde. The lysosome organelles can no longer dispose of poisonous materials, such as acetaldehyde, so it stores the material elsewhere, possibly in the endoplasmic reticulum organelles, which by the way transports ribosomes and produces fat. Think of the ribosomes which help in the development of protein and how they attach to corrupted reticulums while being transported to the mRNA to finish the process. Today it doesn't matter to me if alcoholism exists or not. I know what God has given me, how beautiful the human body is, and how I purposefully destroyed my body. Alcohol is a poison, no matter what. Alcoholism had caused me to experience the shakes. Now my shakes are gone. I began to bloat. I sobered up. I went from 210 pounds to 160 pounds. The cravings when I first sobered up, the phenomena when I took the first drink. The desire was so strong, and I became sick. Constant heartburn, more Alka-Seltzer, Tums, always waking up in the morning and having to puke. Piss pants. Timed exactly, getting from the couch to the toilet. Drinking coffee all morning long just to feel better, with my skin crawling and my tongue swollen. Doing this every day, and staring at myself in the mirror. Puke running out of my nostrils, and bloodshot red eyes. All that pain, and I would drink again by 4 o'clock. Taking breaks for a day, sometimes for about 4 days depending on how mad my girlfriend was. When the urge got on me good though, another excuse to drink. How bad of a person my girlfriend was. Work was hard, the day was long. Nights of getting off work and sitting on the deck staring off into the night. Feeling as though I was going to crawl out of my skin. On my way home from work, seeing the gas station where I always bought my booze at. The urge would come upon me. Sometimes I would stop to get my drink, or I would pass it up. It took a lot of learning. I learned about the obsession, the craving. I sat on the porch because of the obsession. I drank until I passed out because of the craving. I would feel the pain, yet by 4 o'clock I would forget the pain. The comfort and ease that came with the first drink, I couldn't control it. I've watched drunks puke up blood, bleed out of every hole, yet they go back to the bottle the moment their wounds heal. In a haze for months, not even able to talk. Young people that sober up and speak a good speech and mean it even, yet go back out. Alcoholics and addicts in trouble with the law and almost in the clear, off of parole. They get into trouble. I have gained a lot of knowledge, unnecessary knowledge that I never really had to learn in the first place. I had to complicate things in life as simple. I was the guy who wanted to be smart, yet wasn't. My old sponsor used to get me to learn. He taught me how to communicate with others. I worked the steps, learned to pray, got a GED, learned how to write a resume, got into a housing program, learned about credit, setting goals, and a budget. It was suggested to me, and I took the suggestions. I eventually got my C.D.Ls, a baby boy, a failed relationship, a bill to a truck driving school, and I'd learned from my mistakes. Used as experience to make other amends, to recognize the insanity, a wake-up call, keeping me in reality and grounded in my decisions. Learning how to cope in stressful situations. This too shall pass. Tolerance and patience. Surviving and overcoming obstacles in my life. Live in the day. Do the next right thing. I know that the bill is on the coffee table, and I have the money in my pocket. Pay the bill. If the dishes are dirty, wash them. The task at hand. Set goals. Work on the short-term goals. Be intuitive. Compulsive thinking is bad. Learn how to trust myself. Learn from my mistakes. Life can change for us all. The problem isn't what we pay attention to. It's the solution that matters. When I change my actions and my thinking, things get better. My emotions, old ways of thinking and acting, replaced with positive solutions. Burning up energy that could have been used in more productive ways. Stay away from obsession, fixed ideas, and trying to fix problems. Problems tend to fix themselves. I don't always like the results. I respect them though. It's God's will. Once, before Dr. Jung, doctors thought that a connection between spiritual values and psychological change was illogical and arbitrary. Psychophysical theory and revelations of truth flowing from the state of the possessor at the time. Medical materialism attempts to discredit what it dislikes, associating those things vaguely to the nerves, liver, or bodily afflictions. The intellect is illogical and inconsistent. Professionals, and established in the medical field, doctors talked about the same things, condemned ideas, condemned themselves, then used intellect to justify condemning those ideas, saving themselves of course in the end, stating that medical materialism usually attacked those things that are of a religious state of mind and of superior spiritual value. Complicating the situation. Take what you want and leave the rest. Keep it simple. Sometimes things don't need to be answered. In same conditions, keys to the comprehension of normal mental life. Life is but an illusion, used to comprehend normal perception. Understanding illusions help for better normal perception, and hallucinations for normal sensations. Fixed ideas, such as morbid impulses and imperative thinking, are used for understanding normal will, just as obsessions and delusions for normal faculties of life. Psychology believes that isolating special factors of mental life allows inspection outside of usual surroundings, and for a better understanding of anything, we must see it both inside and outside of its environment. Being poked and prodded for the rest of our lives, and examined under a microscope, send us through the maze of life to understand our habits, percentages, philosophy. I believe in facts. What is real is always in plain view, and I do have a certain level of faith. When I go into my 12-step meetings, I see people come and dragging their rear end behind them, and I watch their lives improve. That is a fact. Watching as they straighten their life up, their wife or husband comes back with the children, they get a job, pay child support, and feed their children. Standing at bus stops with a bag full of groceries, talking about paying bills, making the bed and praying, cooking breakfast for the kids. That is a fact to me, and it keeps me balanced and grounded. It's in my face, and it's proof to me that there is a power greater than me. It's an act of providence, whatever you want to call it. God, good orderly direction, group of drunks. It doesn't matter to me. Remember that the value of a person's opinion concerning their belief must be ascertained by spiritual judgments in the following order: first by immediate feeling, then by their relations to our moral needs, then finally by what we hold as true. In forming judgments of ourselves, we should use the evidence that will be used against us by our Creator when we meet Him face to face. Religious practice isn't always the most decisive evidence either. It's the extent of the experiences that are productive, and the degree of the spiritual and divine experience that is most decisive of all. It's quality, not quantity, that matters. Inner happiness too is something that may fool us as well. Serenity and working with others don't always agree. Sobriety is a way of acting, and serenity is a way of feeling. What feels good immediately is not always the truth, when measured against the rest of the experience that we have gone through. Dogmatic philosophy is tests for truth, origin, and not appealing to the future, which is another form of providence in its own right. What I do today will affect tomorrow, progress, and change, creating positive habits, repetition, and more repetition. Dogmatic philosophies say that we can be protected immediately and absolutely from the mistake, but what of the strength gained through the mistakes of experience? There would be no hope. Still hitting certain bottoms in life, ups and downs, I am again hopeless, and I need others to guide me in my search for myself in my own truth in life. The concepts immediately turned into belief and action. Get a new idea and run with it. Cannot rest, proclaiming the new idea or burning energy uselessly working it off. Normal people get an idea and they think about it. People with these concepts are more of action and what to do about the new idea. The evolution of the sluggard and the psychopath. Traditions, fixed forms of imitation and habits, born, raised and died doing what they thought was God's will, versus, wrestles with fate and usually thought of as a genius. Nervous instability, abnormal physical visitations, emotional sensitivity, and a discontent inner life. Working with others is hard for them because they can't understand that immediate inner happiness and service to others don't always agree. Suffering from melancholy, they know no measure, and they are very obsessive, often liable to fixed ideas, which in turn affects the normal will. They also fall into trances, hear voices, see visions, and are thought of as peculiar and pathological. In recovery, in the church pews, speaking in tongues every Sunday, at meetings, believing all that they hear and into action, they go, wasting energy in so many ways, burning sobriety, when it's freely given. Suggestions don't work, unless that suggestion is profound and grounded firmly in a foundation. Concrete in fact, not opinion or philosophy. Emotions, asset, or liability, oversensitive and emotionally immature. My inner child kicked my behind. Stay young like Peter Pan, don't grow up, in my 20s, 30, acting like a 12-year-old. Throwing fits, a spoiled brat who didn't get his way. A braggart, insecure, inadequate and inferior to the people around me. I basically had to grow up and wear the big boy pants. Walk on my own 2 feet and learn how to become a man. To thine own self be true. Providence is the foreseeing care and guidance of God or nature over the creatures of the earth. The direction of the universe and the affairs of humankind with wise benevolence, prudent management of resources, foresight and provident care. Like I once said before, what I do today affects my life tomorrow. Life is a gift, laid before our feet by God Himself. It's not earned but freely given. Decisions, choices, consequences, and all. If nobody tells you they love you today, Roger loves you from the bottom of his heart, and he asks each and every sufferer of any addiction to keep coming back. Wait for the miracle to happen as it has for so many others in the rooms of 12-step programs all around the world. Just keep a plug in the jug and the nose, mouth, and veins all clean. I thank you for your time, and I hope that you enjoy the remainder of the story.
This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, share, make comments, love feedback. This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook.
The relationship between AA groups and clubs. GSO, Box 459, Grand Central Station, New York, New York, 10163 AA. The General Service Office of Alcoholics Anonymous serves as the repository of AA experience and is the publisher of AA conference-approved literature and service material. We are available as a resource to AA members and groups and share collective AA experience upon request. We are not a governing body. Each group is autonomous and has the opportunity to study A.A.'s traditions and decide how it will apply these to local matters. Clubs are not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous, and the relationship of AA groups and clubs is one of landlord and tenant. Groups that meet in clubs rent meeting space. There is usually an agreement between the group and the landlord on the terms for leasing or renting meeting space. Oftentimes, there will be some documentation to this effect. I have also included the AA guidelines on clubs below that reflect extensive shared experience and guidance from our 12 traditions. Guidelines are compiled from the shared experience of AA members in various service areas. They also reflect guidance given through the 12 traditions and the General Service Conference, U.S. and Canada. In keeping with our tradition of autonomy, except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole, most decisions are made by the group conscience of the members involved. The purpose of these guidelines is to assist in reaching an informed group conscience. These guidelines are for AA members responsible for clubs and similar facilities that provide meeting space for one or more AA groups. Club members in AA groups must respect A.A.'s 12 traditions, including the long form of Tradition 3 that defines an AA group. Our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. Hence we may refuse none who wish to recover. Nor ought AA membership ever depend on money or conformity. Any 2 or 3 alcoholics gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided that, as a group, they have no other affiliation. The relationship between a club and an AA group is mutually beneficial when all involved respect the autonomy of the group. Members of a group may also be club members and pay dues to enjoy the privileges of the club. However, there are no dues or fees for membership in an AA group, and each group is self-supporting concerning rental payments for meeting space, coffee arrangements, and literature. Since the early days, there have always been A.A.s who have sought a place to go for coffee and conversation, a spot where members could gather for lunch, a place where they could gather socially on weekends and holidays. In 1947, Bill W. wrote a grapevine article on clubs that became part of our pamphlet A.A. Tradition, How It Developed. The title carried the question, Clubs in A.A. Are they with us to stay? Today, the answer to that question can be yes. The success and the endurance of the club idea can be ascribed to the wisdom and guidance expressed in Bill's article and to the willingness of club-minded A.A.s to help make them work. These A.A.s make it possible for a club to function effectively without detracting from A.A.'s source of recovery, the AA group. Experience demonstrates that a club can live in harmony with the AA community and serve a very useful purpose for those who find a club helpful. Getting started. Even though a club is not A.A, many will think of the club as A.A. Particularly the non-A.A.S in your community. While it is suggested that the name of the club not involve AA, the club members stick carefully to A.A.'s 12 traditions and accept funds only from club members. Naturally, this excludes any kind of fundraising that would involve the public. Dues and contributions from club members keep the club going. Besides, to rent money from AA groups that hold their meetings in the club. Frequently, there is a temptation for a club to accept building materials, furniture, and kitchen equipment and supplies from well-meaning, civic-minded non-A.A.S. Everyone in the club will want to respect Tradition 7 in the principle of self-support that has brought AA along to this point completely independent and financially sound. Define the purpose of the club and look for space that will meet the club's needs. Determine the amount of money needed for such an operation, and work out a budget that will cover getting started, rent, utilities, custodial care, and any other known expenses. Call a meeting of all interested A.A.S, separate from an AA group meeting. Discuss the plans and financial needs, and determine how many dues-paying members can be counted on from the beginning. Also, ask the local AA group or groups whether they would be interested in renting space from the club for meetings and, if so, how much rent they would consider reasonable. Sometimes, charter members of the club are willing to pay a little more in the beginning to help get the club off the ground. It seems better to ask all to participate in this financing than for one or two people to assume this responsibility. Let every AA participate who wants to so that the club has the support of many members. At this meeting, you might also determine qualifications for club membership. Most clubs require 30 days of AA sobriety, while a few require 90 days. But new A.A.S may use the club facilities as guests until they qualify for club membership. All dues-paying members are normally eligible to hold office and to vote at the club business meetings. What kind of directors? During the initial meeting, ask interested members to consider 2 more questions. Who will serve as club directors, and what should their qualifications be? Directors handle the business affairs of the club, is responsible for the lease and pay all bills for maintenance of the property. Many clubs require approximately 3 years AA sobriety for directors. Most agree that AA members serving as club directors should not hold offices in the AA group's meeting in the club. This practice avoids confusion and conflicts. Business decisions. If enough A.A.S are interested to make financing possible, it is time to consult a lawyer and have the club incorporated as a non-profit business organization, under the rules of the state or province in which it will function. Needless to say, a club so incorporated should not have A.A in its name. This should not be a very complicated or expensive project. Incorporation is following Tradition 6, which implies that property to be used by A.A.S should be separately incorporated and managed. Less problems of money, property, and prestige divert AA from its primary purpose. If bank loans are necessary, they are held by directors of the corporation, and payments are made from club funds. It is better to start small and enlarge as growth and finances warrant. After the club is incorporated, a meeting of the directors may be held to determine details of club operation. This might be followed by a meeting of dues-paying members to obtain approval of overall plans and club rules. Gambling. Many difficulties have been caused in already existing clubs over the years because of gambling, and in some cases, publicity and notoriety have resulted. Because so many club members are also AA members, this kind of thing can be damaging to AA. Card games, billiards, table tennis, and TV watching are activities that many club members enjoy if they are played for the fun of it, not for money, gambling, placing bets, etc. Experience proves that intergroup or central offices, answering services, and central service committees need to be separate from clubs, physically separate and separate as far as the administration is concerned. In some cases, a newly formed intergroup or central office is invited to use club facilities. At that point, A.A.S should take a good look at Tradition 9 and remember that a service office is responsible to all AA groups and members, while a club is responsible chiefly to its dues-paying members and the groups that rent space from the club. AA groups meeting in clubs. The AA group, the importance of each group's maintaining its autonomy and identity separate from the club in which it meets cannot be emphasized too strongly. The group's responsibility is to the suffering alcoholic and the fellowship as a whole, rather than to the club. To fulfill this primary purpose, the group uses a name different from that of the club. The group is self-supporting through its contributions. This includes paying a fair rent for use of the facilities, maintaining a separate treasury, and making its contributions directly to the local central/intergroup office, the district, the area general service committee, and to GSO. Remember, an AA group is available to any alcoholic, as the only requirement for group membership is a desire to stop drinking. Even though the group meets in a club that may be composed exclusively of AA members, and many members of the group may be club members, too, the relationship of the AA group itself to the club should be the same as it would be to a church, hospital, school, or other facilities in which it might rent space for its meetings. Conference recommendations. A discussion on clubs during the 1967 General Service Conference noted that, although there is no such thing as an A.A club, many clubs have been identified with AA because they are often organized and directed by AA members, and membership may be limited to AAS clubs where meetings are held and which are maintained for the 12th step, as well as social purposes, can avoid difficulties by abiding by AA traditions. Conference members agreed that clubs should not use the AA name, should be organized apart from AA, and should not accept money from outside sources, is supported by membership dues and individual contributions from AA members. The question of a paid membership in AA does not arise since AA meetings held in clubs are open to all. Further guidance was given by the 1972 General Service. The conference, which advised that GSO no longer accept contributions from clubs. This decision was based on returns from a questionnaire sent to all clubs. The answers indicated that the difference in club operating procedures was too great to enable GSO to decide whether or not money received from a particular club was contributed by AA members only. Of course, GSO does accept contributions from AA groups that meet on club premises. In 1989, the General Service Conference recommended discontinuing listing clubs in AA directories. However, groups that meet in clubs will continue to be listed in the directories. 5M 10/09 PS MG03.
This video is brought to you by The Vine on YouTube and by The Storyteller on Facebook. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. Love feedback.